Level 1, the Serf. You are born in the dark. The hut has no windows. You enter the world in a single-room structure shared with a cow and 3 goats, because the animal's warmth is the only insulation your family can afford against the January cold. Your father is not a free man. The lord of the manor owns the land, owns the mill, owns the fishing rights on the stream running 50 yards from your door. Your father pays him a third of every harvest simply for the right to survive on the property. You are born into this arrangement without being asked. This is called serfdom. You cannot leave the estate without written permission. You cannot marry without the lord's approval. You cannot grind your own grain without paying the lord's miller his cut. The village priest teaches you that this is God's design. You believe him because you have nothing else to believe. Level 2, the castle page. A local knight passes through the village. He needs a boy to run errands in the castle. Your mother volunteers you before you can speak. You are 7 years old. You carry everything you own in a single cloth bundle, and you walk 3 miles behind his horse in the October rain. The castle is enormous. It smells of horses, wet stone, and wood smoke. You are handed to the head steward, a thin man with hollow eyes who looks at you the way a carpenter looks at a plank of warped timber. Your job is total. You carry water pitchers. You empty chamber pots. You polish silver cups until the skin on your fingers cracks and bleeds. You serve food at the high table to knights who do not look at your face. You sleep on cold stone near the kitchen fire with 4 other boys. You are cold every single night. The castle does not care about your comfort. It cares about function. You are a function. The knights eat. You clear the bones. The fire dies. You carry more wood. The candles burn down. You replace them. You exist to make their lives easier without ever becoming visible to them. Level 3, the trained page. 2 years pass. You stop crying at night. You learn the correct way to address every rank from a baron to a bishop. You learn which fork belongs where at a formal table. You learn to pour wine without a single drop on the cloth. You watch other boys who cannot master the rules get sent back to their villages in disgrace. A senior knight's wife teaches you to read, which is not kindness. It is utility. A page who can read a sealed letter is worth more than one who cannot. You study Latin prayers, the heraldic symbols of every noble house in the county, and the names of every significant fortress in the region. You also begin physical conditioning. You lift stones. You run carrying heavy bundles strapped across your back. You are handed a wooden sword and told to swing it at an oak post until your shoulder stops working. The older pages beat you in training drills every single day. You do not complain. Complaining marks you as weak, and weakness here is not met with sympathy. Weakness is met with more beatings. Level 4, the Squire. You are 14. A scarred veteran knight selects you as his personal squire. This is considered an honor. You quickly learn what the honor actually costs. His armor alone takes an hour to put on correctly. You wake before dawn every morning to begin the process. You polish each steel plate until you can see your own face in it. You oil every leather strap so nothing cracks in the hard cold. You sharpen his sword, his daggers, and his lance points until the edges catch the light. You muck his warhorse's stall. You exercise the animal in slow circles for an hour so it does not develop problems in its legs. Then your own training begins. The castle master at arms is a brutal and efficient man. He hits you across the backs of your thighs with a wooden pole when your footwork breaks down. He throws you off a moving horse into frozen mud until you learn to fall correctly without shattering a wrist. You practice the longsword drill 1,000 times until the movement lives in your muscle rather than your mind. Your body changes under the work. The fat burns off completely. The muscle builds. Your hands become permanently calloused. Your knuckles are always split. Level 5, the battlefield squire. Your knight rides to war. You ride behind him. This is the first time you have left the county. The column stretches for miles. Warhorses, supply wagons, foot soldiers, and the slow grinding noise of everything moving together across badly maintained roads fill the air for hours. The first battle is nothing like what you imagined. You imagine trumpets and clean lines of armored cavalry. What you find is mud so deep it swallows horses to the knee. Men screaming in 3 languages. The smell of burning hair and burst bowels carried on the wind from 200 yards away. Your job is simple and extremely dangerous. You stay just behind the front lines on horseback, carrying a spare lance and a backup sword. When your knight's lance shatters against a shield, you ride forward through the chaos and shove a new one into his armored hand. An arrow passes through the edge of your left sleeve. You do not stop. You ride forward anyway. You place the lance. He wheels the horse and charges. You ride back to your position. You grip the spare sword. You wait. You are not a knight yet. You have no right to glory. You have only the right to keep him alive long enough to win it. Level 6, the man at arms. You are 19. Your knight is dead. He died of a camp fever 3 weeks after the battle, in a wet tent, delirious and shaking. His family has no further use for you. You are released into the world with your training, your weapons, your horse, and nothing else. A mercenary company absorbs you. 50 men who fight for whoever can pay. You fight for wages now. This is a significant shift in how you understand war. You stop thinking about honor. You start thinking about survival and calculated profit. The veterans teach you that a dead enemy foot soldier is worth nothing. A captured enemy nobleman is worth an enormous ransom. You learn to chase mounted knights rather than kill them. You knock them from their horses, pin them in the dirt, and take their surrender before they can reach a way. You capture a minor lord in a skirmish outside a burned village. His family pays 40 pounds of silver for his return. 40 pounds is more than your father's entire village produces in 3 years of labor. You understand the system now. You have stopped serving it from the bottom. You are beginning to work it from the inside. Level 7, the Knight Bachelor. The ceremony takes less time than you expect. You have served 5 years with the mercenary company and distinguished yourself in 3 separate campaigns. A regional lord witnessed your actions at a river crossing, where you held a bridgehead against a force 3 times your size for nearly 2 hours. He sends for you. You kneel on cold stone in a small chapel. Candles burn on the altar. He draws his sword, speaks the formal words, and taps the flat of the blade against each shoulder in turn. He speaks your name and the word knight in the same sentence for the first time. You stand. You are handed golden spurs. They feel lighter than you imagined. Outside the chapel, men who ranked above you yesterday now step aside when you walk down the corridor. Guards address you formally. The servants stop meeting your eyes. The weight of the title settles on you before you reach the door. You owe the Lord military service. You owe the crown its taxes. You owe the church its tithes. You owe a moneylender in the city for your destrier's cost. You are a knight with nothing to your name except a borrowed title and a heavy list of obligations you cannot yet afford. Level 8. The Tournament Knight. Knighthood without income is a specific and grinding problem. The tournament circuit partially solves it. You ride from town to town, competing for prize money, ransomed horses, and captured armor. The crowds pack the wooden barriers 3 deep, screaming and throwing flowers and betting heavily on outcomes. In the jousting lists, you are genuinely dangerous. Your years of being thrown from galloping horses have given you balance and nerve that pampered sons of wealthy lords simply do not have. You unhorse 4 knights in a single afternoon at a tournament in the south. You take their horses in their formal surrender. You sell 3 of the horses and keep the best one. You sleep in a pavilion tent and eat roasted meat and drink actual wine. For 3 consecutive days, you feel exactly like the Iron God you once watched ride past your frozen village as a small boy. Then the tournament ends. You ride back out into the rain. Your prize money covers 2 months of expenses. The circuit continues through the winter. You follow it because there is no other practical choice. Your reputation grows slowly. Your debt does not shrink. Level 9. The Landed Knight. A lord grants you a village and a small manor house in exchange for your continued military service. You ride into your new estate for the first time in late autumn. The manor house has a leaking roof and a collapsed section of outer wall. The great hall smells of mold and old straw. The village holds 43 peasants, 12 of whom are visibly sick, with something that makes the skin yellow. The fields are thin and badly managed. You sit on your horse in the mud, looking at it all. You think about the cold hut where you were born. The 2 places look almost identical. You move in anyway. You begin collecting the harvest tax immediately. The peasants look at you with the same hollow terror your father showed when knights rode past your village on the road. A bad harvest comes in the second year. The village elders kneel before you in the great hall. Their children wait near the door. They are thinner than the elders. They beg for 1 season's reduction in the grain tax so they do not starve. You look down at them from your chair. You remember every version of that hunger. You shake your head. Your horse needs feed. Your armor needs repair. The tax is the tax. You realize that night, alone in the cold hall, that you did not escape the system. You simply changed positions within it. Level 10. The Knight Banneret. You command enough men to carry your own banner into battle. This is the formal distinction. A Knight Bachelor follows another man's flag. A Knight Banneret plants his own in the ground, and men rally to it. The promotion comes after a winter campaign where your tactical decision at a ford crossing saves the right flank of the army from complete destruction. The commanding lord calls you forward on the battlefield itself, in front of the assembled force. He takes your pointed pennant and cuts the tip from it with his sword, converting it into the square banner of higher rank. The gesture is public and permanent. You now have 12 mounted knights under your direct command, and 40 men-at-arms below them. You are responsible for feeding them, equipping them, paying them, and leading all of them simultaneously. The administrative weight is crushing and relentless. You spend as much time managing supply disputes, pay arguments, in desertion problems, as you spend in the saddle. Commanding men is nothing like fighting alone. A panicking soldier is a manageable problem. 12 knights who lose confidence in your judgment can collapse an entire flank in under 10 minutes. Level 11. The Order of Knighthood. The king notices you. A sealed invitation arrives bearing the royal wax. You are to be considered for membership in the kingdom's highest chivalric order. The ceremony takes place in a chapel, built specifically for the order. Its stone walls hung with the heraldic banners of every knight who has ever held membership. You are given a ceremonial mantle of heavy blue wool, a collar of worked gold, and a formal stall in the chapel with your own carved shield mounted above it. The other members of the order are the most powerful military figures in the kingdom. Sitting among them is profoundly disorienting. You remember eating boiled turnips in the dark beside a sick cow? Now you eat beside dukes. The order carries real political weight that goes far beyond the ceremony. Membership signals that the king personally trusts you. Lords who previously ignored your letters now respond within the week. Doors in the royal court open without requiring negotiation. The honor is also a leash. Members are expected to support the king's stated policies publicly and without visible dissent. Your personal opinions become very expensive to hold openly. Level 12. The Baron. The king raises you to the peerage. You are now a baron. The formal letter patent creating the title is written in Latin, on stretched vellum, and sealed with the great seal of the realm. You hold a seat in parliament. You have the legal right to sit in judgment over free men of the realm. Your estate has grown to 4 manors and a minor stone castle in the northern part of the county. Your household now includes a steward, a chaplain, a household physician, a master-at-arms, and 30 permanent servants. The administrative machinery of your life has become a full-time occupation of its own. Boundary disputes with neighboring barons require lawyers and sometimes armed demonstrations of force. You sit in the great hall dispensing justice 3 mornings every week. A man is brought before you, accused of poaching deer in your private forest. He is extremely thin. His children stand at the back of the hall. They are thinner than he is. The law on the matter is entirely clear. You order the penalty carried out. You do not watch. You return to your waiting correspondence. You have 43 other matters requiring decisions before the afternoon meal. Level 13. The Earl. The title carries 3 counties. You receive them after a rival earl dies without a legitimate male heir, and the king chooses to reward your decades of service rather than elevate another claimant. The annual revenues are substantial. The obligations attached to them are more substantial. You now raise and supply a significant portion of the royal army during wartime, entirely at your own expense. You sit near the very front of the parliament chamber when it assembles. Your voice shapes legislation. Other lords approach you in the stone corridors with their requests, their grievances, and their carefully worded threats wrapped tightly in polite language. You begin to understand that the political chamber is more genuinely dangerous than any field you have ever crossed on horseback. A lance either strikes you or it does not. Political maneuvering arrives from directions you cannot anticipate, through men you trust, in documents written in language specifically designed to obscure actual intent. You hire a legal scholar. He reads everything before you sign it. You stop trusting anyone who approaches you with warmth they have not previously demonstrated through years of concrete action. Level 14. The Marshal. The king appoints you Marshal of England. You are now the highest military officer in the kingdom below the king himself. You organize and command the royal army in its entirety. You set the order of march. You assign battle positions across the full force. You maintain military discipline, which means you personally authorize the executions when men desert in the face of the enemy, steal from civilians, or attempt mutiny against their commanders. You authorize them because the alternative is an army that cannot function in the field. You sit in a command tent reviewing maps while younger knights ride out to die on orders you have written before breakfast. The tactical decisions you make in the morning become bodies on the ground by afternoon. A flanking maneuver you judge too costly kills 200 men and ultimately succeeds. A direct assault you order to preserve critical time kills 400 men and also succeeds. You write formal letters to their lords explaining the military necessity of each loss. You develop a particular face for writing those letters. Flat, efficient, completely unreachable from the outside. Level 15. The Duke. You are the highest-ranking non-royal peer in the entire kingdom. Your income exceeds that of most foreign kings. You hold estates across 4 counties and landed interests in 2 additional kingdoms through marriage and inheritance accumulated over a long life. Your household is the size of a small government. You have a chancellor, a treasurer, a council of senior advisors who meet formally 3 times each week, and a legal office that never fully closes. The king consults you before making significant decisions. He does not always follow your counsel, but he consistently asks for it. You are old enough now that your body carries the complete record of every campaign you have ever ridden. Your left knee was damaged by a horse fall in your 32nd year and has never been fully right. Since your right hand shakes faintly in cold weather, your hearing in the left ear is mostly gone from decades of standing inside the noise of pitched battle. The younger lords look at you in Parliament the way you once watched knights ride past your village on the road outside your father's hut. Level 16, the Regent. The king dies in his bed, before his heir is old enough to govern. The royal council appoints you regent. You now govern the entire kingdom in the child's name. Every document of state passes through your hands first. Every judicial appointment, every military mobilization, every diplomatic correspondence with foreign crowns. You sit in the king's chair in the great council chamber, but you do not sit in the king's throne. That distinction matters. You are careful about it every single day without exception. The temptation exists, and you are aware that it exists. Men around you suggest in careful language that the transition to your own rule would be clean and would have broad support among the barons. You understand precisely what they are suggesting. You have them removed from court immediately. You are not interested in the throne. You are interested in the kingdom functioning. The boy heir grows. He watches you govern from a distance, then from the same room. At 17, he dismisses you with a formal letter of honor and his sincere personal gratitude. You ride home to your estate in the early spring. Level 17, the king's champion. At the coronation of the young king, fully grown and crowned in the cathedral, you are formally named king's champion by ancient tradition. The role is ceremonial and completely absolute. You ride into the coronation banquet in full plate armor, on horseback. A herald reads the formal challenge to the assembled court in a loud, carrying voice. If any man disputes the king's lawful right to the throne, he must declare it now and face you in single combat on the floor of this hall. You sit on your horse in the candlelit stone interior. Iron chandeliers burn above the gathered dukes and bishops and foreign ambassadors. You are very old now. Your armor fits differently than it once did across the chest and shoulders. Your horse stands steady beneath you without prompting. Nobody accepts the challenge. Nobody ever accepts the challenge. The herald reads the formal words a second time into the silence. The silence holds completely. You turn your horse. You ride back through the great doors into the cold outer courtyard. The night air enters your open visor. Level 18, the grave. There is no higher rank. You die in your own bed, in your own castle, in the 73rd winter of your life. This is considered an extraordinary achievement by every standard of the age. Most of the men you trained beside in the mud died before their 40th year. Your body is wrapped in fine white linen. Priests sing over you for 3 days without stopping. Your heraldic banner is hung above your carved stone effigy in the chapel of your estate. The effigy depicts you in full armor, hands folded across your chest, face composed in the expression of a man completely at peace. You never looked like that in life, not once. Your lands pass to your eldest son, according to the established law of inheritance. The peasants on your estate continue paying the harvest tax to him instead of to you. The amount does not change. The mill still takes its cut. The deer in the private forest still belong entirely to the Lord. A boy somewhere in a cold village watches armored riders pass on the road outside his door and feels something harden quietly behind his ribs.